Hello guys, welcome to episode 2 of this MobX tutorial. In this episode I have decided to take things further by creating another store and starting with the actual development of the application. So the context of the application is going to be a task management app, right, with projects, tasks, and so on. In the previous episode I kind of created a very simple bare bone store, and we saw in action how to create a store, how to connect our component to that store. But we're gonna remove that in this episode because we want to create a meaningful store for the context of the app. We're gonna create model classes, tasks, projects. They're gonna be connected, so there is a relationship, a one-to-many relationship between tasks and projects. And then we're gonna connect the component to the store, and we will see how the component kind of updates based on the changes to the store. So inside of my application, as you can see, I've got this, branch that I'm going to commit the changes to. So I'm going to say final commit on branch 1 or episode 1. Doesn't matter. Let's call it episode 1. And then I am going to create a new branch called episode 2, and we're going to continue from episode 2. So the goal of this episode is to create a MobX, a store that manages projects and tasks. So laying the foundation for a meaningful task manager app, which is the context of the app. So designing the store with MobX will model projects as objects with an ID, name, and a list of tasks. So each project will have as many tasks as it wants, a one-to-many relationship. Each task has an ID, title, completed as status, and of course belongs to the project. MobX encourages using classes for stores and entities, so encapsulating state and behavior, because we're following OOP principles and ideas. So for our model classes, for our entities, we're going to create classes. For our stores, we're going to create classes as well. Now let's see what are the model classes that we need and what we need to create for the store. So we're going to have two model classes, task and project, which represent the core entities of the application. So these models use MobX to make their state observable and reactive, as I showed you in the previous episode. So we're going to basically import makeAutoObservable. We're going to create our fields, right? ID, title, completed. And then in the constructor, we're going to receive the values for these fields, right? And then we're going to call makeAutoObservable with this, which is the current instance of this model class. And then we're going to have some actions. So toggle, update title. Toggle is going to, of course, toggle the value inside of our completed field. And update title is going to update the title of a task based on a new value. And then we've got project. So project has ID, name, and an array of tasks, which we're going to initialize, so an empty string. And then as you can see here, we are taking in the ID and name of a task. We are calling the makeAutoObservable. And then we are going to have a couple of actions. So add task is going to add a new task to the array. Remove task is going to remove a task based on its ID from the array using the filter function. And of course, rename is going to take the new name of a task, and is going to rename that task. So these are the two model classes that we're going to create inside of this folder, stores models.ts. And then we're going to have these members because of using makeAutoObservable in the constructor. We're going to have these. So these are the members that we're going to have for the task, class. Title, ID, and completed are going to be observables. Toggle and update title are going to be actions. So whenever this.completed or this.title changes, MobX reactively notifies any observables, any observers, any components that are connected to the store to update themselves. And of course, we are using makeAutoObservable in the other class, project, right? So that means that ID and name are going to be observables, and tasks is going to be an observable array, and then these are the actions. So again, this means that changes to name or tasks like adding or removing will automatically update any observable React component that uses them. So let's go ahead and create these two model classes inside of our project. So inside of our stores, we're going to create models.ts. So now let me start writing the code for our model classes. I'm going to import makeAutoObservable from MobX and create the first model class, task. It has these fields, ID, title, and completed. And then I'm going to create the constructor, taking the values for ID, title, and completed. And then I am going to call makeAutoObservable on this, which will turn every field into observables and every method into actions. Then the actions toggle, which is going to toggle the completed field, which is a Boolean, update title, so this is the first model class that we need to create, and we're going to create the next one now. Project with these fields, ID, name, and an array of tasks, which is initialized to an empty array, and then the constructor, and then makeAutoObservable, and then the action methods, right? The actions like add task to add a new task to the array, and the remove task to remove a task based on its ID using filter, and finally rename. So these are the two model classes that we need for the project. We have created them. Now let's continue with the notes. So we already talked about these parts. Now we're going to create the store of the application. So the store is going to be very, again, easy. We're going to create this root store inside of the stores folder, right? We're going to import the two types, project and task. We're going to import makeAutoObservable. We're going to install this, dependency, and then we're going to call the makeAutoObservable here. And as you can see, we have an array, an empty array of projects. And then we can add a project. As you can see here, we're creating an instance of a project with this ID and the name that we received from the input parameter. And then we're going to push that to the array. We have a similar action, remove project, and then another thing that we have inside of our store is the add task to project action. So basically there is a relationship, one-to-many relationship between projects and tasks. A project can have as many tasks as it wants. So with this action, we're going to take in the ID of a project and a title, and then we're going to create that project. We're going to find that project, inside of the projects array that we have inside of the store. And if that project is found, we're going to create a new task based on the title that we have received, and then we're going to add that task to that specific project using the add task defined inside of the project model class that we just created. So let me continue and create this root store, right? src stores root store. I'm going to go inside of this store and create this, and of course we need to install the dependency for creating IDs as well. Let me import makeAutoObservable. Let me import the two model classes, and let me import v4 as UUID v4, unique identifier, and then create the store, root store. The constructor is going to call that makeAutoObservable because we need to make that array, turn that array of projects inside of into an observable. Then let's create the actions, add project, remove project, based on the ID of a project, we're going to remove it from the array, and then add task to project, which takes in the project ID and the title of the task and creates a task and assigns it to the project that it has found in that project's array. And this is the store that we have. We just need to install this dependency. So let me export the store and let me install the UUID dependency. So I'm going to say npm, let me go to the PowerShell window and say npm I UUID. So that is installed. Now what we need to do now is to go and update the app component. So the app component needs to be updated, but I'm gonna take you to the notes one more time. We create observable classes for the two model classes, right, with state and with actions or methods. Then the root store holds a list of projects, so makeAutoObservable tracks the state and actions automatically. We're going to use UUID, so install the dependency to generate unique IDs for projects and for tasks, and methods like add project, add task to project, and remove project. Now we need to use this store inside of our app.tsx, right? So basically the idea is very simple. We're importing the store as before, we're importing observer, and we're wrapping the component inside of an observer. We're creating some states. I hope you're already familiar with these states, props, hooks, concepts. If you're not, there is a playlist on the channel that you can watch. So basically I'm gonna create states for the name of the project, for the title of the task, and for the project, the selected project ID, because I want to, based on the project that I select, I want to see the tasks assigned to that project. So I'm initializing these states, and then I have this input which is bound to that project name state, two-way data binding. I have a button, right? And the button, as you can see, when you click the button, it's going to take the value inside of project name state, and it's going to call the add project from your root store to add that project to your array, to that array that we maintain inside of the root store. And then we're going to reset that state, which will of course update the value inside of the input as well. And then here we have a select element, so a drop down, right? And this drop down is bound to the selected project ID. So the idea is that whenever I select a project ID from this drop down, I want to see the tasks associated with that project ID. So as you can see, I am binding this element, this select element, to the selected project ID, and whenever the value changes, I'm gonna update the value inside of the state, and then I'm gonna render this option which says select project, and then I am going to map over the projects that I have available, and for each project I'm gonna render another option element. So this select will contain the IDs, or let me say the names of the projects that are available inside of our store. And then if there is a selected project ID, if the value inside of this state is not null, it means that I have selected a project ID from that dropdown. What I am going to do is to render this input, which is bound, as you can see here, to the task title state. So we had a task title state here, right? So this new input is bound to this state here, and then we have a button, right? We have a button, and when that button is clicked, we're gonna add this new task, right? We're gonna add this new task to the project that we have currently selected. So we're gonna call the add task to project action from our store, and then we're gonna pass in the selected project ID state and the task title state, trimming it, by the way. And then we're gonna reset the task title. And this is the add task button. And then down the road, we have another section that is gonna map over the projects array inside of the root store, right? And for each item there, it's gonna render the name of the project and then it's going to map over the tasks associated with that project, and it's going to render li elements. Inside of the li elements, it's going to render the title, and based on the value of the completed flag, is going to render either done or pending. So this is the update that we need to make to the app component. I'm going to go ahead, remove this, and I'm going to update it. So importing observer, importing root store, and importing use state from React. Then creating the app component, wrapping it with an observer, creating my states, project name, task title, selected project ID to track the ID of the currently selected project from that drop-down that we discussed. Then let's return the template. So we're going to have an H1 for task manager. We're going to have an input bound to the name of a project. And then we're going to have a button to add a new project. The next step is to create another section which will render a drop-down, a select element for the projects that are available. And whenever we change the value inside of that select element, we can see the tasks associated with that project. So this is the select element. The select element is bound to the selected project ID state, and then if there is a value inside of the selected project state, we're going to render an input to allow the user to add a task to that selected project. And of course, for each selected project, we also need to map over the tasks associated with that project to show those tasks. This is the last part of this template. So we're going to map over the projects. First, we're going to render the name of the project, and then for each task inside of that project, we're going to render li elements to show the title of the task and the status of the task. And we're done. So this is the app component. Let me remove this part. And this is the application. So first off, right now, I do not have any projects inside of my store, right? So why not we create some projects? So I'm going to say React project number 1. This is the first project inside of my store. Let me add another one as well, and let me say Angular project number 1 now. So 3 projects inside of the store. Now, as you can see, I have these projects available. And if I, for example, select the first one, React project number 1, I can start adding tasks. So I would say React project number 1, task 1, and then I can add task 2, and then I can add task 3. So these are the tasks associated with the React project number 1. And as you can see, the project itself is here, and for the different tasks that are associated with the project, we're rendering li elements. Now I'm going to choose React project number 2, and I'm going to go with number 2 here, and number for example 2 for the task. I'm going to remove this. And as you can see, there are some tasks associated with the React project, right? So I can go ahead and, for example, start adding other projects and other tasks associated with those projects as well. So this is the application right now. Two model classes, projects, tasks. There is a relationship, a one-to-many relationship between projects and tasks, and we're allowing the user to enter the values for a project name, for a task title, and to associate them together. Let's talk a little bit about observables before we wrap up this video. Observables, actions, and computed values. I guess this is important. So observables are pieces of state or data that MobX watches closely. When observables or the fields inside of your store change, MobX tells your app to update anything that uses those values. For example, the components. In your code, title, completed, and tasks are observables. And for example, if you change the title of a task, or if you add a task to a project, for example, MobX knows that there is a component, the app component, that needs to be updated automatically. Actions are the functions or methods that change observable data. They are like the official ways to update the state. So in your code, you've got toggle, update title, add task, remove task, and rename. These are the actions. So these methods tell MobX, hey, for example, I'm about to change some observable data. Using the actions, you're going to help MobX keep track of the changes that are happening to the state in a clean and predictable way. The last concept that we haven't talked about yet is computed values. So computed values are values that are derived from your observables. We're going to see an example of computed values in the upcoming videos. So these are calculated automatically and are kept up to date by MobX. So they are like formulas based on your data. For example, in our code right now, you do not have a state to compute or a state to represent, for example, let's say the number of tasks that are, let's say, completed. But we can create a computed value like this. So I have created this completed tasks count function, and I am returning the number of tasks that have completed set to true. So this is an example of a computed value. We're not creating a separate state or a piece of data for this. Why not? Because we can calculate it based on the current state of the application. Based on the number of tasks, we can quickly go over them and count the number of tasks that have completed set to true. So this would automatically recalculate the number of completed tasks whenever the task or any tasks completed a status changes. So whenever you, for example, enable or disable the completed flag on a task, this computed value will update automatically. So the summary of this episode, we created observable model classes, with MobX classes. We built a root store to manage projects and tasks, and we rendered and updated stored data in React components, in the app component, of our application. And we connected some inputs to the, store actions, some, buttons. So that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. Stay tuned. Things are going to get interesting and exciting in the future episodes. We're going to add new features to the application, and you're going to see so many different ideas of MobX in action. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.